Awesome. So welcome to the Shifting Gears on the Log Driver's Waltz. My name is Meaghan Hackinen. I'm the writer. I'm really excited to be here today with Jen and Eric from the Log Driver's Waltz and James, who's volunteered to moderate it for us. We'll learn a bit about each of us through our bios in a minute, but I'd like to start with the territorial acknowledgement. So we are gathered here today on the unceded and ancestral territories of many Indigenous peoples and cultures. I think it's a good time to take a moment to reflect on where you're coming from today. I'm grateful to live and play and work in Kelowna on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. As mentioned, this session is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube. So if you have to duck out early, tune into that. Please make sure that you're muted. If you have a question, pop that into the chat and we'll definitely have time for audience Q&A later on in the session. I think that's about all I needed to do. How today will work, I'm going to toss it over to Jen, who will introduce us. I will read from my book, Shifting Gears, and talk a bit about how it came to be. Then I'm going to talk a bit about my Log Driver's Waltz experience this summer, and we'll hear more about the route from Jen and Eric, and then we'll open it up to questions at the end. So it'll be about an hour and a half in total. We're really excited that you're here today, and without further ado, I will pass it over to Jen.
Thanks, Meaghan. For anybody who doesn't know us, Eric Betteridge and Jen Adams, we published the Log Driver's Waltz in 2020, and since then we've had two grand departs on our 800-kilometer bikepacking route, and also since then we've dot watched Meaghan Hackinen fly around our route last summer and set an incredible ITT FKT. And we are, I guess, hardcore bikepackers. We bikepacked the Tour Divide in 2022, and we have created this Log Driver's Waltz as a passion project that has developed into something that is more than just a bikepacking route. We promote bikepacking for all through all kinds of activities, of workshops, rallies in the spring, and we have a whole bunch of routes as well on our website to encourage people to get into bikepacking in every way they can. And through the Log Driver's Waltz, we have met Meaghan Hackinen, and it's just absolutely delightful to meet Meaghan. She's of course a Kelowna-based ultra cyclist and rider, whose two-wheeled adventures have taken her from Haida Gwaii to Mexico's high plateaus across Canada and the US, and from North Cape to Tarifa, along some of Europe's highest paved roads. She competes both locally and internationally with strong finishes in events like the Transcontinental Race, the Trans Am Bike Race, North Cape 4000, and the Paris-Brest Paris Brevet. Meaghan holds the women's course record for the World 24-Hour Time Trial Championships and several bikepacking races, including the Big Lonely, the BC Epic 1000, Silver State 508, and the Log Driver's Waltz. She has an MFA in writing from the University of Saskatchewan and explored relationships, experiences on the road, and encounters with wild places in her creative nonfiction and prose. We have totally enjoyed both of Meaghan's books, and we look forward to her next book. it's so much fun to read about her adventures. And James, who has jumped in here and is supporting this online event, is an extraordinary ultra endurance cyclist. He's event coordinator for the Fixed 400. He's a crazy, passionate fixie rider, local Portlander, and man of charisma. He's the winner of the 2022 900 plus mile Big Sky Spectaculaire. And he also holds the fixed gear course record for the 24-hour World Time Trial Championships held in Borrego Springs. Incredible stuff. James has toured and raced multiple different routes across the U.S., as well as bike traveling in many foreign countries. And James is also a potter, multi-talented. So that is who we are.
Wonderful. Thank you for those great introductions, Jen. I guess I will take it away from here to read a little bit from Shifting Gears. Before I start, I guess I always like to begin with some thank yous. So first off, to New West Press for being keen enough to publish not one, but two biking memoirs, to the BC Arts Council for providing me an individual arts grant to help me live while I was editing this book and unemployed. To the incredible duo that is the Log Drivers Waltz, Jen and Eric, for actually giving me the idea of doing the FKT. And I don't think they thought I was going after the overall, but they planted the seed and they made the course. And afterwards, they hosted me for a night before I flew back home, and Jen fixed my sandal, which is a very kind thing. I'll never forget you for that. My feet, thank you. Finally, I'd love to thank the audience for being here and spending some time with us. So before we start, let's give a round of awkward silent Zoom applause to ourselves. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, now I'll dive into the good stuff. I completed the Trans Am bike race in the summer of 2017. Like my experience cycling down the Pacific coast with my sister that I wrote about in my first book, South Away, I was really green and not at all familiar to this world of ultra cycling. So all those bumps on the road and me kind of finding my place are what this book is about. Shifting Gears is an insider look into the unregulated sport of self-supported bike pack racing, and it shares my personal experience of camaraderie amongst competitors, digging deep to overcome tough situations, and finding joy and beauty in the midst of unexpected situations on a two-wheeled adventure that spans a continent. Over the years, I've moved from purely self-supported road events to the realm of fully supported road events, and more interestingly, off-road and mixed surface races like the Log Drivers Waltz. The Trans Am was my first and the longest ultra to date, and I'll start by telling you a bit more about the event, and this comes from the first chapter. Race organizer Nathan Jones was clearly on to something when he devised the Trans Am bike race in 2014, setting riders out with a goal as simple as it was daunting. Get on your bicycle and ride across the country as fast as you possibly can. Hailed as America's premier self-supported road race, the Trans Am takes participants from Astoria, Oregon to Yorktown, Virginia, following the Trans-America Trail. Covering 4,264 miles, 10 states, several mountain ranges from the Western Cascades to the Appalachians, and over 150,000 feet of vertical gain, it is, as Trans Am finisher and Inspired to Ride star Juliana Boering succinctly put it, a race only for the crazies. Aside from a modest entry fee and a GPS tracker, there are no prerequisites other than a willingness to venture into the unknown and an inclination towards boldness or stupidity. Unlike stage events like the Tour de France, the Trans Am operates as a continuous event. After rollout from Astoria, the clock does not stop ticking until you reach the Atlantic coast. No drafting, stages, or non-commercially available support permitted. Media attention is minimal, and the only prize up for grabs is bragging rights. Unless you're lucky enough to have friends or family fly out, no one will even be there to hand you a beer when you cross the finish line at Yorktown Monument, Virginia. The Trans Am is not for everyone, but to those craving an experience outside the norm, the race harbors an allure, a mystique, the promise of something so epic it resonates more as aspiration than description. The opportunity to venture into the beating heartland of America and discover what you are really made of. Mere mention of the Trans Am has become a siren's call, ensnaring the mind of the intrepid adventure-seeking cyclist. And you can probably guess, dear audience, that I was one of those starry-eyed cyclists. So as I write later in the acknowledgement, this book, Shifting Gears, yes, we'll hold it up, is in many ways a love song to my experience as a race competitor. These stories are born from a desire to express my enduring appreciation and gratitude to the individuals and geography I encountered along this coast-to-coast sojourn. Throughout the writing process, I reflected a lot both on how I wanted to capture my own authentic first race experience, paint a picture of something that would resonate with other endurance cyclists who've had similar but unique experience, and give everyone else who is never going to sign up for an event like this an insider's glimpse into the beautiful, bizarre world of competitive ultra cycling. So I'll jump in and read another short excerpt. Yeah. So this comes from the beginning. The 2017 edition of the Trans Am bike race rolled out just after dawn in Astoria, Oregon. No banners, no signs, just a legion of day-glow, lycra-clad cyclists in the parking lot of the Harborfront Maritime Museum, listening to race organizer Nathan Jones bellow final reminders from a bullhorn against the backdrop of a massive bronze propeller blade. "This is a bike ride, all right. It's a race, but really nobody cares," he said, pausing as nervous laughter leapfrogged through the crowd. "Nobody cares. Your family barely understands what you're doing. Your friends have no idea. And the people you don't know, they're going to think you're idiots. And you kind of are idiots." Nathan continued, but I found myself distracted, head weary from fitful night before the big day sleep, scanning the crowd for the reassurance of familiar faces and sizing myself up against the competition. Based on previous race results, only 50% of us were likely to finish. Eric, who had accompanied me from our host's apartment, had wound up on the opposite side of the propeller blade, sharing a laugh with a couple of guys I didn't know. Closer, I caught the eye of Portland bike courier DBS. With a brisk nod, he rolled by to wish me luck. "Remember, rubber side down," he said. Then, as an afterthought, "Do you think that's the best place for your spot?" I had attached my spot tracker, an orange and black GPS tracking device the size of a poster and the thickness of a paperback, under my seat post. I'd struggled to find a fitting location for it among frame bags and aero bars, having only picked up the device during the pre-race meeting at the column the night before. Used correctly, the spot would broadcast my live location to a website called Track Leaders, where friends, family, and race fans, collectively known as dot watchers, a name derived from the popular pastime of watching racers' dots inch across a course when viewed on a screen, could follow. In an event where participants spanned several states, GPS tracking devices provided a handy replacement for the army of officials that would otherwise be necessary to maintain the integrity of the event and deter anyone hoping to skim off a few hilly miles by taking a faster route. "You might not get reception with it aimed at your butt," DBR helpfully pointed out. I stood back to examine my bicycle, bracing it with both hands. "Maybe I could strap it to the handlebars?" "Be quick," he said, wheeling towards another face in the crowd. Just then, Thomas Camaro, the Trans Am's oldest finisher to date, marched by with a bottle of champagne, a tower of plastic cups protruding from his jacket pocket. "Hold my bike," I said. He agreed, tucking the bottle precariously under an arm as he reached for a Epona. I felt lightheaded. Only 5 minutes left now. My trembling fingers struggled to pinch the zipper from the top tube bag where I'd stored my Swiss Army knife. Stupid nerves. I popped open the blade and nicked my thumb, attempting to cut the zip ties attaching my spot to the seat post. "Here," said Thomas, seeing the smidge of blood, my electric anxiety. We traded places. He took the knife and passed the champagne off to a nearby racer. As Thomas sliced my spot free, I instinctively stuck my thumb in my mouth and sucked hard, the taste of metal. A few seconds later, he had secured the device to my handlebars with another set of zip ties I directed him to pull from the larger frame bag. "Thanks," I said, grateful but blushing embarrassment for failing to complete even this small task alone. I didn't need anyone to remind me that once we rolled out, I would be solely responsible for taking care of my own problems. This was DIY racing, low budget, no support. Either you figure it out or you go home. Thomas grinned, retrieving the champagne and ceremoniously tipping an inch of bubbly into a plastic cup for me. The fizz sloshed in the cup between my jittery palms like the tumultuous Columbia River. Other racers clinked rims in delight. I wonder how I even got there, struck yet again for the umpteenth time in the past week by the incalculable magnitude of this challenge I had so cavalierly signed up for. Suddenly, we were counting down to the grand depart. I slugged back the champagne, crushing the plastic cup into a jersey pocket. A cheer erupted. Bystanders snapped photos. We were off, jostling shoulders on our high-vis vests like a school of yellow snapper fleeing Astoria's misty shores. So I will stop there and maybe encourage you to pick up the book and check it out. I have a couple more notes that I wanted to kind of read before moving on. Yeah, I competed in the Trans Am in 2017 and then was really bitten by the ultra distance bug. I went the following summer to do the North Cape Tarifa as a pair and actually DNF'd from that. But in DNFing, I learned a lot, and I came back the following year in 2018 to compete in the North Cape 4000 and kind of finished what I started, but in a completely different event and solo, if that makes any sense. I competed in road events from 2017 to 2019. I think we all know how 2020 went. And in 2021, to open up my opportunities, I purchased a salsa cutthroat so that I could get off the pavement. And there's just a lot more mixed surface kind of adventure races in BC and North America. I think that the road cycling is superior in Europe, and I will definitely compete there in road events. But you know, in the Okanagan, where I live, anyways, there's a lot more interesting Forest Service roads and little lakes to explore and rail trail than, you know, the alternative, which is mostly highway. So. I will answer a question from Richard because it directly applies to what I'm talking about. He says, "How did it come about that you chose Tabor as your first ultra? That's a pretty big first step." Yes, you're correct. I was young and stupid, and I didn't know any better. I was inspired by Lael Wilcox. In the summer of 2016, I was getting into randonneur cycling, which is a long distance form of non-competitive endurance cycling, and I had moved to a new city. I wanted to kind of push my limits and go harder, but in a way that was not too harsh. And I was getting really into it, and Lael won the Trans Am, and it kind of put that event on my radar. And you know, when you see somebody do something and you can just imagine yourself kind of doing it yourself. And as I say in Shifting Gears, I harbored no delusions of grandeur. I didn't sign up to the Trans Am bike race to be the next Lael Wilcox and win it. I signed up because she inspired me to see what I was really made of and push my limits a bit further than the randonneur cycling events. it was a big jump. I also think that there's a lot more ultras around today than there was in 2017. So it's much easier now to take smaller steps. That being said, I'd already cycled across Canada. I cycled the Pacific Coast. I had cycled the Seward Cascade route into Puerto Vallarta. So I'd done a lot of bike touring, and I had a pretty strong sense of what it was like to be on the road, just race pace. That whole thing about riding all day and barely sleeping, that was new to me. So should I answer any more questions, Jen, or should we jump into the log driver's waltz part and loop back for questions later?
I would take a few more questions about your ultras before the log driver's waltz.
Sounds good. Do you want to read them to me?
Fred Chagnon says there seems to be a gap between 1,000-ish kilometer rides and the whole country. So how do you know you're ready to make the leap? Maybe you just have to try and see what happens.
Preparing to make that leap is challenging because you don't know what that gap entails until you overcome it. And the way I went about it maybe wasn't the best way. So I was living in Saskatoon, and I knew I needed to stay fit in the winter. So I did spin all winter in a spin class. And I didn't know what Zwift was. I didn't own a bike trainer. I rode once a week on an indoor track, not like a bike track, like a running track, for 2 hours. And that was my only real cycling for like 6 months. And then April came, and all of a sudden I was like, oh man, I have to ride outside. I commuted, but I didn't train, and I have asthma. I don't do very well in the cold. So I commuted in the snow, but it's very different than getting on the bike and really working up a sweat. I guess I would say to prepare, just research as much as you can and talk to people who've done it to find out all those missing pieces. And focusing on the whole body for those longer events is really important, because there's like a million things that could go wrong. And by just being a really well-rounded athlete, I think you can stave off some of those overuse injuries. I had a background in team sports, so I kind of had these like strengthening and mobility routines that I could go back to and do that over the winter. But I would not recommend preparing for your first ultra by doing spin classes. I think that it's kind of limiting.
Emily has a question about the name of your bike. So your bike is named Eponia, I think.
Yeah,
And she's wondering if you named your bike Eponia because you're a Zelda fan.
Yes. I used to play a lot of video games when I was a kid. I love being outdoors, and I also love staying up all night playing video games. So if it was daylight, I was outside. If it was nighttime, I was lurking. I'm more a fan of the Nintendo and Super Nintendo versus the N64 versions, but I believe all bikes should have names, and that one came to me. This is Amelia over here, named after Amelia Earhart.
Wonderful. I think you've touched on it a bit, and you may speak to it some more, but Sam is asking what the workout regimen looks like for ultra distance in comparison to race prep.
So like, how does it different to train your body in terms of how is it different to train your body versus all those other things? Is that kind of what the question is? Train for distance. Yeah, so to train for distance, I would do whatever you would do to train for shorter races, and then add in some longer rides. When the weather's nice, I consider a longer ride anything like more than 4 hours. On the indoor trainer, anything more than 3 hours, because it's pretty brutal to be on the indoor trainer for that long. And just train, however you would train for shorter events. So probably some intervals, and different types of intervals with different intensities and durations, and then doing longer endurance rides, making sure you have some back-to-back rides in there to make sure your body's up for it and that you have a good match between your seat and saddle and chamois and all those things that you need to kind of work out on the longer rides, and that will give you a chance to make sure that your navigation works and that your food strategy works and that your that your bike isn't going to combust on you or something. Yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Cool. Why don't you move into Log Driver's Waltz experience?
Yeah, for sure. Did you guys want to say anything else about the route before we go into it? Like, we had a bit of an introduction before, but anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things about putting up a route like the Log Driver's Waltz, which is 805 kilometers, because we found a little bit of extra dirt last winter, is that when we put it up, we really put it up as a route for people to tour and see the Ottawa and Gatineau valleys, which is where we live, and we want to share the real gems of riding that we know exist here. And we kind of figured 800 kilometers, this is about 8 days for your average rider. It's a week. People can do it between a Saturday and then drive home on a Sunday or whatever. And didn't think too much about it. And I guess sometime in 2020, somebody emailed and said, "What are the rules for FKTs?" And I literally Googled, what does FKT mean to a cyclist? And found out that it was the fastest known time, and that we were supposed to have a rules for it on our, no, but so it is an aspect of putting up a route that we were not expecting. And it's only one of the aspects of our route, in the sense that it's there all the time. It's always open. Anybody can go and ride it. And we encourage people to take it and slice off bits or add bits or do it in any way that they want. But then when somebody wants to come and ride an FKT, it's like, you ride the route as it is written. And you just have to do it that way. So I think that's a big aspect of it. The route is always there, and it's about seeing both the Ottawa and Gatineau valleys where we live, and but we also are really excited when people want to ride it fast, because that's obviously turning their crank. But we're just as excited by the Lanterne Rouge riders who make it, in 8.5 days. So just saying. So that's why I'll leave it there. But
and just for people who are not so familiar with the kind of modern bike packing traditions, they're these routes that are published, they're shared, and there's nothing official about them. There's no sanctioning, and we have created the Log Driver's Waltz as a very publicly accessible resource to get people out and riding in beautiful country and choosing their challenge. So Meaghan chooses to ride hard at times, faster than anyone, and we're absolutely delighted, as Eric said, to have people who are choosing our route and as a week-long holiday and or more, and going out and riding a route more as a tour. So Meaghan found our route.
And I do actually remember. I remember her saying, I forget, it was another actually a video call thing, and you said, "Yeah, I might be doing riding the Log Driver's Waltz," and we were on that call, and it was like, oh wow, we've made the big time if Meaghan's considering riding her route. So it was really kind of fun. So
Well, again, thank you so much for making this awesome route. And the Large Drivers Waltz website is a really cool resource, and that there is a lot of information about the route and other routes and stuff you can do in the area. So to, I guess, ground us a bit, I decided I wanted to do this FKT, but in part of my preparation, I did some touring while I was in the region. So I was staying in Chelsea with Chris Panaski from the Canadian Shield Bikepacking Summit and the podcast and stuff. And I think it was the Loop de Loops, one of your
loop
shorter
the loop,
routes.
yes, it's sort of a
Loop de
fun
Loop.
like loop of the wolves. Really, that's
Oh,
yeah.
so that is kind of in a similar region, and I took that at a nice, relaxing touring pace, stopping at bakeries and really enjoying myself. I also did the Canadian Shield 400 as prep, and I took that one a little bit quicker, but I feel really lucky in that I maybe have a bit more time than other people because I don't have kids, and my sweetheart James lives far away. So we're often left to our own distractions, and I only work part-time. So I was able to kind of, do some more relaxed cycling in preparation for this ITT that I did intend to go hard for. So I wanted to do the Log Drivers Waltz because it seemed like it was a good distance for me. After doing the Transcontinental in 2022, I kind of melted down and it unraveled me a bit. I found it really hard to stay on the road for 4,500 kilometers, just kind of like fighting for position day after day. And physically it was exhausting, but eventually I couldn't handle it. I kind of had some problems with my electronics. I had problems with sleep deprivation and too much of it. I think it was the electronics and the sleep deprivation and the navigation that threw me. So for this year, I wanted to do shorter events, and this one seemed like a good event for me because it was in the window of 400 to 1,000 kilometers. It was mostly off-road. It was supposed to be quite beautiful. It was hilly but not insanely hilly, so I like the sound of that. I With the ITT, you get to start when and where you want on the routes. And I am a natural late riser. And I was staying in Chelsea, which is closer to Gatineau Park than the route official start in Almont. So I opted to start in Wakefield to do Gatineau Park, which is beautiful, but quite challenging. First thing, so that I could do it with fresh legs. I also decided to start at the luxurious hour of 9 a.m., which sounds late for a race start. But for me, because I'm not an early riser, I feel like I'm always going into these events running on empty. You have to be to the race start at 6 and you're getting up at 4:30. And then you don't sleep because you're all worried about getting to the race start and all of that kind of stuff. So I figured I would just give myself a generous start time. I stayed with the warm showers host like 3 kilometers from the covered bridge in Wakefield. I got up at like 7:50 and then headed down there. So when you're able to plan things, when you're able to take control of these things, I think that they really contributed to my success. So I went into the Log Drivers Waltz with a goal to beat Corey Ostertag's time that he set in 2022 of 49 hours and 43 minutes. I wasn't initially going for this, but it was actually something that Jen said, because I told her like, oh, I'd like to do it about as fast as Corey. And she's like, you either have to try and do it faster or slower. Don't try for the same time as him. And it really shifted me to be like, oh, okay, I have to plan to do it faster than him. And that's a bold thing to say because I've competed against him before and I know that he's a very strong athlete. But I think that you do have to commit to a certain strategy, and that's kind of what I committed to doing. one factor that made it more challenging for me was not having a leaderboard when I was doing the ITT. So I really enjoy like being able to look at track leaders or any sort of leaderboard and see how I'm stacking up against the competition. And sometimes I do this to a fault, you know, where you're just pressing like refresh, refresh, refresh on your phone in hopes of, I don't know what happening, somebody else falling off the map. But I thrive off of this sort of competition, and I knew it would be more challenging for me to race against the clock. And so I kind of got some people on my side to help me out. I asked James, I asked my parents, I asked a couple friends to just send me notes of encouragement to keep me going and motivated. And I'm really grateful for them to been able to help me like that. So my game plan didn't involve much sleep. I hoped to be able to get the event done in under 2 full days, and figured that I could probably stretch it pretty far without taking a break to rest. So I started out in Wakefield. I rode through Gatineau Park when I was nice and fresh and it wasn't too hot yet. And then I rode through Ottawa as there was a bit of afternoon traffic and stuff, but it was still, everything was still feeling quite fresh for me. I got to Almont, which is the start of the race, about 160 or 70 kilometers into my ride, and that was my first stop to refuel aside from water. And of course, there was construction downtown, and I was pretty good, like desperate for some resupply then. And I looked up the Circle K and I went to it, and there was nothing there. And of course, that wasn't on Jen or Eric's maps, so I should have knew that it wasn't actually a place. And I had to ask around to find some resupply, and I had sunscreen smeared on my face like a, I don't know, crazy person, and nobody was giving me good answers. So I went to, I think it was Bob's Bakery or something. I went to a bakery. I got some. Yeah. Bob's, oh man, Bob's saved the day. I just got a whole bunch of pastries and put them in my pocket and prepared to ride through the night. And because I was starting at a different time, I kind of put myself in a difficult spot for some of the resupply in the Lanark Highlands and Frontenac Park, where there really wasn't much there. And I was a bit worried that my resupply in the afternoon would be my last one until pretty, I don't know, the next morning sometime. As it turned out, I made it into another town. I can't remember what it was. So I did get one more resupply, but the first night was amazing. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed feeling like I was on a quest. The roads were just fun, ups and downs, and my legs felt fresh. And I had Corey Ostertag doing commentary on my race online. So it was kind of neat to see what he was saying about what I was doing while I was racing, and I could check in. And I really managed to kind of keep myself going and motivated. And there's some mosquitoes at night, so I couldn't really stop anyways. They kind of keep you going. The next morning, I started to flag a bit, and I ended up taking a bit longer than I wanted when I kind of had my first good resupply. And then I took a nap in Shawville, which was fine. That was kind of part of the plan, was to stop and sleep when I could get sleep. From Shawville, I held it together for the next few hours. And after my evening resupply, kind of around sunset, after 36 hours, I just like, it started coming undone. I dropped my charging cable for my computer. I forgot to bring my backup. So I only had so much battery life in my computer before I had to navigate on my phone. It was a really humid night, and around Mont Ste. Marie area, it started raining. But it wasn't cold, but I felt like I should be wearing my rain jacket, so I couldn't figure out what to wear. And the sleep deprivation was just really kicking in around midnight, and I was taking my rain jacket off and putting it on again. And I had to walk through areas that I had biked through on previous rides because I was so tired. And then my computer fully died, and I was navigating on my phone, and I have an old phone and it's not waterproof. And that was only the last 20 kilometers, but it felt like it went on forever. Even as it was challenging, I couldn't not appreciate how lucky I was to be out there competing against the clock and, challenging myself, and my body felt really good. And the course is really beautiful. The roads are different from each other. There's not too much rail trail, so it doesn't get dull. And there's a lot of cool small towns whose names I have entirely forgotten now, but they were beautiful. The strange thing about finishing something like this, an ITT, is that I wrapped up by myself at 4:33 in the morning. The first thing I did was snap a selfie to prove that I was there, but there's no one around to even acknowledge me. And then I think I got a phone call from James, which was really lovely to know that he was lurking up in the middle of the night to cheer me on. So I picked up my stuff from my warm showers house in Wakefield. I went to the Tim Hortons drive-through and ate on the ground because I think the dining room was closed still. It was too early, and I just sat there on the ground eating my food, feeling rather contented, and then I slept for a day. So I think that's my experience. I found it to be a really great route. I would actually consider doing it again as part of the Grand Depart because, like I said, I thrive off of that kind of community experience. And in this year, I feel like I pushed myself a bit harder at the start of races because of all the competition. And in this case, I really had to rely on my own pacing, which worked out well for me. So I also purchased a Dynamo Light this year, which was really helpful for riding through the night. And I think that if you have more light, you can go faster. And I wanted to keep my pace up all night, so it proved well. Yeah, that's my experience. I wish I could remember more of the small towns and stuff, but it's been too long. I have to look at the map a little more. I really appreciate how this part of the country, there's a lot of English speaking people because I'm quite Anglophone myself. And there's a lot of stress when you're out there, traveling in an unfamiliar area. It's nice to know that you can communicate with people, and I was able to. So
as David Tuttle says, 3 of the towns are on still standing on CBC TV, where they highlight these small communities that are still standing. One of the reasons we created the route in the way that we did was to bring economic activity to these small communities outside of the nation's capital, where you don't have to go very far from Parliament Hill to find little towns that are really struggling. And cyclists, in fact, inject quite a bit of money into these little towns that they ride through, and our route is getting to be known in these little communities around the route, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, cyclists are hungry customers. So I see a comment from Richard saying, I learned of the Log Drivers Waltz through this event and was intrigued after visiting the Facebook page as they live in Montreal. It was a big transition for someone like me who primarily does road, tarmac, rail trail to self-supported bikepacking. I just wanted to comment that it was a bit of a hard transition for me mentally to get used to riding off-road, because I wasn't expecting things like downed branches or water crossings. And the first time I went out for a shakedown ride, I did the 2022 buckshot route just on my own to make sure I could survive a night in the wilderness by myself with gear. There were so many times where I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is just a field. Like, there's not even a trail. I don't understand. Why would someone do this? And then you realize the route creator made this trail or made this route, through this non-trail to connect two things that would otherwise be impossible to connect on pavement. And you kind of start to see like the genius in it as you travel these routes. So I joke that I'm a roadie princess in that I still sometimes get like upset when I come to things that I don't think should be there. Like James and I both did the Dark Divide in the Cascade Range in Washington in August. And there was this section to decommissioned road that was like so thoroughly decommissioned. Like it was like every 100 feet, there was a giant pile of rocks and you had to hike your bike through it. And there was stinging nettle everywhere. And I was like, why does this exist? Like, couldn't they just put a big pile of rocks at the start and the end of the road? Did they have to be this thorough? Like, are these just like big kids with big toys and they're playing? Are they just trying to make it? Like, I don't know. I guess, yeah, they did a very good job. So I still sometimes am surprised by the situations that self-supported kind of adventure cycling takes you into, but I don't get pissed off about stuff anymore. I just like accept that it's all for a reason. It's to connect these things that wouldn't otherwise be reachable. And I find event directors have their own brilliance, their own inner workings, and sometimes they want to make it hard for you. But usually there's some pretty big payoffs along the way.
Not to step in and say anything about brilliance or plain brilliance. That was not, that was a bad segue. One thing that does intrigue me is the relationship between as the fact that we've developed a route. We're route developers, but we're also riders. And so we go and ride our own route at the Grand Depart. And I sometimes wonder, like, who was the idiot that made this route go up here when I know perfectly well that there is a bit of paved road I could take along here? And why did they make me go through a kilometer of standing water to get from here to there instead of just routing me up? But more to the point, that relationship that occurs, and I think it's a little bit similar to somebody reading a book. The reader has a relationship with you through your book. They're responding to what you've written down, and riders on a route are responding to what is written down, and there's no control over that. Like each person comes to a route, rides it, and has their own experience. Each person comes to a book, reads it, and has their own experience. And I think that's an interesting parallel, perhaps. I mean, I suspect it's true with any creative endeavor, but it is an interesting thing. And I know that we have kind of wondered on some routes that we ride, why did they put us here? And then, as you say, because the next thing is really cool.
I can ask a question maybe for you guys. It's from Greg. It says, I was wondering, are there any trail amenities that could make the route better? I am in Lanark County, and our trails committee might be interested in finding out what improvements they could be looking at.
Well, that's very cool, Greg. What, I don't actually know.
Well, we have over 1,000 points of interest on our route. Information about accommodation, food, and one of the big challenges of our route is places to stay, and any information about either inside accommodation or camping is golden for people that are planning a bikepacking route. Of course, there's stealth camping. Some people are comfortable just camping in the back of a cemetery, or grabbing some sleep beside a church. But some people want a formal camping place. And
Yeah, so we do have what we call trail angels, and so on as points of interest, and it will maybe have a campsite, and it'll just say, email this this person, or phone this person, or message them, and if they're around, they're willing to let you stay with them. So that's always stay at their property, or get water, or we have people that have just say, yeah, I have tools. Like, I got a full bike shop in my basement, and if somebody, if you need to fix your bike and I'm around, by all means, there's there is that that relationship between rider and people who live along the route that is super important. And I think all of us can think of like wonderful experiences that we had just meeting somebody who, I don't know, they were very welcoming. They gave us a glass of water, or they threw a bagel out the window of their truck and said, "Here, have a bagel." Whatever it is. It's those kinds of experiences that are very enriching for everybody. We do warm showers. I'd encourage everybody to get yourself on warm showers if you're not already doing it, because you meet all sorts of great people who come through.
And I saw Bruce Deloria just logged in, and Bruce was a warm showers host or a couch surfing host that I had in 2009, and we have stayed in touch. So yeah, it's wonderful the kind of friendships you can make on warm showers. I also want to speak to what you were saying about one of the biggest challenges is finding accommodation. And I think that when I'm racing, that's not something I think about as much, because I don't mind stealth camping or not sleeping, or just kind of, throwing myself up behind a convenience store under an awning. But when I'm actually touring, I like to know when I have a safe place to sleep. It's much more of a priority. And I think that this is something people have very different comfort levels with, right? So it's great to be able to have options for people and to know where camping is, and especially having like trail angels or folks who are friends of the route who can provide some amenities, I think is yeah, it's really helpful, because it can definitely be a challenge on long established routes like the Transamerica Trail. A lot of the churches and fire halls allow cyclists to stay, and I've heard of a lot of interesting conversations that people have, like sleeping in the fire hall at night and getting to, I don't know, meet the guys on the night shift or whatever, right? So I think it's great that you're working to make those community connections happen, because yeah, they're important, like you said, for everybody. Who doesn't love meeting a stinky cyclist out of the blue?
Even longer term, we are we're interested in advocating at the provincial level to encourage the Ontario government to open our provincial parks to cyclists who don't need to book ahead. There are very prohibitive policies in our provincial parks where you have to book ahead, and cyclists don't necessarily know where they're going to end up every night. And so long term, we would really love to see our provincial parks create more bike friendly policies.
They're here. I've been touring like with James in Oregon, where you can just show up at the hiker biker sites and always get a spot and always get a warm shower. And sometimes they have little boxes to like lock your stuff and charge your things. It's luxury, but to be able to show up at the last minute is something that, yeah, our parks aren't really set up for.
Yeah, and another thing that happened with many of the commercial campgrounds around COVID was that they began saying that you had to be self-contained with your own sewage, and they wouldn't take tents. So they're really restricting to basically trailers. So we had to take a number of campgrounds off the route that had previously been on the route. So At the same time, we've also had more people, more individuals come forward and say, yes, here, my dad's farm is here and he's got an outhouse and you can go camp there and that sort of thing. And so it's a give and take. And obviously the more the better, because that gives people more flexibility.
There are a few questions, techie questions. Meaghan, do you want to talk about your bike just in a few more technical terms?
Yeah, so this is Amelia. She's a Salsa Cutthroat Force, a 2018. I bought her from a gynecologist in Red Deer who was selling her used. I say that because I needed to verify that he was legit, and I found like his website and stuff, and I was like, okay, I trust this person. He's a doctor. And I used it for all of my events this year. I had it set up kind of pretty similar to how it is now. I think I had 44 mil tires. I had that top tube bag that you can see, that bottom tube bag kind of near the bottom bracket. I used a full frame bag to keep my water and some smaller items in. And I had a feed sack that I stuffed a bunch of snacks in and some extra F2C nutrition powder. I didn't have a seat post bag, which kept my bag, or kept my, I don't know, bike pretty light. At the same time, I didn't really have much space for extra stuff. When you take that seat post bag off, you lose a lot of storage. And as you can see, I don't have the biggest frame. But I had just had issues with the seat post bag banging around, and I figured if I could get rid of it, I would get a bit of advantage from removing the sway and the weight, and maybe just have some more stuff shoved in my pockets. There was a question about my fork. It's whatever fork comes on this type of bike, it's supposed to be compliant and kind of absorb some of the shock, and I find it does do that. And I have a Redshift shock stop suspension stem that it's supposed to absorb some of the shock also. I wished I used wider tires. That was the one mistake I made. I wanted to be like quick and arrow and fast. And in the second half of the event, my butt was kind of sore. Like it's an off-road route mostly, right? So I think on the website, they probably recommend wider tires, and I chose not to listen to them.
They do.
Bigger, bigger, wider. I should have gone with bigger tires, but I made it, didn't have any issues. I think those are the important things about my setup. And like I said, a dynamo hub to keep my devices charged. And I mean, when I have the charging cables for everything, and to keep my light going strong.
Yeah, people who have ridden our route fast have actually ridden on a huge variety of tire widths. It's amazing the range of tire widths, but we do hear very often people saying, "Oh, well, I wish I had fatter tires, wider tires for more comfort."
Meaghan, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to make a prediction. Well, we had coffee with Corey after he set the FKT on in 2022, and as you said, it was 49 hours and 49 and a half hours plus or minus, and he said at that time, he said, I think somebody's going to break 48 hours, and just as a like, because obviously it's sort of the next big thing. It had gone like 60, 50, 49, under 50, and then you came along and you've gone 43, 39, I think it is. And okay, do you think anybody is going to go faster than you ever?
Yeah, records are made to be broken. And though my ego clings to having an FKT, I think it's exciting when, the times get faster and faster. And I think the combination of maybe having great weather on a grand depart where somebody could really use the competition to motivate them, but the weather was also good. And that's something I didn't mention. I chose my dates like specifically based on a good weather window, and I got caught with one thunderstorm at the end, but in general it was very dry, and the roads were easy to travel on. I think in Corey's year and this year it was a bit wetter, which slows things down for sure. So I do think it's beatable, definitely. And it'll be exciting to watch where the race goes. Hopefully it continues to attract all sorts of riders. I think that's the beauty of a grand depart in these events, in that you take as long or as short as you want to do it. And it's exciting to see all the stories that come out of the experience. I have a question for you guys in the chat. It's from Robin, and they want to know, what are the features of the routes that you like, and how did you weave that into the Log Driver's Waltz? I mean, you guys haven't done much biking, right? Tour Divide.
Well, I think one of the things that you mentioned was that there wasn't too much of any one kind of riding. So we very consciously would not put people down rail trail for 100 kilometers, or at the same time, we might throw in a little bit of rail trail for a bit of a rest after 50 or 60 kilometers of up, sort of leg sapping up and downs. So that's part of it. There's some beautiful campsites and beautiful swimming places in the North Frontenac Highlands. And, we've spent like really nice slow rides where we had leisurely mornings and great swims and that sort of thing. And there's good food, there's good coffee, there's good beer if you're into beer. And
there's beer on the route? No one told me there was beer on the route.
You missed all the beer, but I mean, we pretty much go through the Calabogie Brewing. Like you almost go through their yard.
Yeah, we haven't mapped all the microbreweries on the route, but there are quite a few. And the route is also influenced from my family connections in the valley. My mom is from Shawville, and my dad is from Renfrew, and we have spent a lot of time in and around those communities and riding in and around, and found the real gems of the back roads that exist around just west of Ottawa.
Another thing that it may be unique. I don't know how many other bikepacking routes actually go through the capital city of the country that they're found in. But going through downtown Ottawa, it's another experience. It's you're riding on bike paths, and there's people jogging and walking their dogs, and there's people paddling on the Rideau Canal. You go by the National Art Gallery, the Museum of History, houses of Parliament Hill, all these things that people see on postcards all the time. And what better way to see these things than going by them on a bike? And a number of people we know of have stopped and spent a couple extra days or a day extra in Ottawa just because there's so much to do, and it's been. So I think it's got something for everyone. As Jen mentioned earlier, 100 kilometers outside of Ottawa, you can be outside of cell service. Like we actually do say, take a spot, because there are places where you won't have cell service, and if something does happen, you do want to be able to get help. So that sort of thing. Yeah.
I see our time is quickly closing in on us, and I really would love to hear more about your writing plans for the future, Meaghan.
For sure. Thanks for bringing that up. So I'm really excited to have 2 books in the universe, and I look forward to doing some more in-person events in the new year to kind of, I don't know, celebrate and meet other cyclists and people who are interested in biking in all of its forms. The project I'm working on right now is a collection of essays kind of spanning 2018 until now, transitioning or, documenting my experience as I kind of transition through different types of endurance cycling. And each story is kind of honing in on a specific event or an aspect from the event or a lesson I learned or someone who impacted me. So shorter pieces that will kind of be part of a collection, and that really enables me to pick and choose what parts of my life I'd like to write about. And I also am hoping to write more about some of the other experiences that have kind of accompanied this journey. As Jen read in my bio, I've won some races. I've actually been the women's division winner in 12 different races. So I feel like I've learned a thing or two, but I also feel like people maybe don't know me outside of that. And I would like to touch on some of it. For instance, I live at home with my parents because it's a really expensive pastime. I'm not a pro cyclist. No one pays me to do this. So to afford to do it, I live at home with my parents so that I don't have to spend all of my money on rent. So I would love to kind of share some of the experiences from that and probably humorous light, kind of poking fun of myself a bit, but also there's like a housing crisis here. Like, I don't know. I'd also like to share some stories about, my relationship with James. We were dating in the pandemic and we're both these like adventure cyclists, but we couldn't see each other because we're on different sides of the border. So we'd have these like hot, sweaty indoor bike dates where we'd be like pedaling our indoor trainers. And I'd be like, oh, babe, show me that heart rate monitor. Let's see your numbers, which I think could just be an entertaining story about, what someone's life is like in this particular state and time, and hopefully would engage an audience. I don't know. You tell me if you guys don't like it, like maybe I won't write about it. But I do think, I've had some pretty interesting experiences off the bike that kind of feed into my cycling accomplishments that might be interesting for people to hear about. For instance, one of the big reasons I got into off-road cycling is because I was hired as a care attendant to work for someone who did adaptive cycling, and he was out on the forest service roads and the rail trail, and he wanted someone to help him do adaptive cycling. And I put my hand up. I was hired, and it was through him that I first got off the pavement and had these kind of really wonderful experiences in the wilderness on my bike. And he always poked fun of roadies, and I kind of like took it in stride. But after a while, I was like, what am I doing on the road all the time? There's all these gorgeous places to explore. And here I am like pedaling along semi trucks and drivers who maybe don't want to kill me, but might throw a bag of urine at me. So I think telling those stories might be, I don't know, there might be something there anyways. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Well, I have absolutely loved your contributions to the town bicycle and some of the other little essays that you have published here and there that I've come across. It's just wonderful to read of your experience, read your writing. I really find your writing inspiring. Your stories are really inspiring, and I can't get enough of it.
Oh, well, like, please tell the writers you like them, because it's a very lonely pursuit sometimes. And we spend a long time picking the right word and rewriting sentences again and again and again. So it's nice to know when we get it right. I've had a couple of people who've done the Trans Am reach out and say that they really enjoyed Shifting Gears. And that to me means a lot because, they've been there, they've seen these same roads, but to hear that it resonates with another person, it's really validating, I guess.
I really liked the piece that, and I think you shared it personally as well as it was shared on the town bicycle, about encouraging people to sit down and reflect and write up their trips, and you gave some tips to people about ways to do it, uh, and I think that particularly these days, with everything being click and swipe and like and not really read, just look at one picture. I think that some longer form, thoughtful writing, there really is a place for it. And so thank you for actually contributing to that longer form genre that we can react with and spend more time with, and I think also most of us reading it will say, oh yes, well that does remind me a little bit of some other time when I was out and doing something, not maybe like riding across America, but I was on a bike ride once, and yeah, that happened.
Can we take a question from Bruce Deloria, who had his hand up?
Okay, I'm muted. Hi, nice to see you. I'm sorry I was late. I finally remembered after this first part, but I had two questions for you that I thought of for a long time. I've been thinking about the second question. Well, your first comment was more of a comment. I really like it. Your book was great. I really like when you talk about stories that we don't hear because we're not there, we're not racers, and when you tell stories about things that happen to other people, that's really good because you have a unique opportunity to know the people involved and all sort of the things that they do. So I would encourage you to, I'd love to see more things about the inner world of racing and other people do. And the other question I have is, how do you deal with the kind of food that's available when you're out there, or not available, I should say, the kind of food that you're stuck eating? Does that affect you like you're riding? I mean, I would think it would. That's all. That's my question.
Nice to see you, Bruce. Oh, yeah, I think the food is a challenge, and the folks who have the most iron guts seem to do well. I try for a lot of liquid nutrition because I find it easier to digest. So if I'm at a gas station, I'll just like buy, a Starbucks drink, juice, smoothies, like a giant big gulp in America. So I try and get as many kind of liquid, easy to digest calories as I can. It's like the anti-diet. And then other things I go for are those like donuts and stuff that I just find easy to chew, and candy. But yeah, these are not very healthy things to eat. I think for shorter events, you can get away with it easier because you can jump back and have that big salad when you finish. But for longer events like the Trans Am, like I definitely think that if I had been able to access good food, I would have felt better. I can guarantee you that. So I think that it's probably, it's just trying to make the best choices possible.
Okay.
Bad choices.
One more thing. I want to thank you for the story about your grandmother. I think it was the first time we heard it. In the book, and we've known you for quite a while, so it was we really appreciated that.
Oh yeah. I managed to bring my grandmother Hackinen into both South the Way and Shifting Gears, and it was to me really nice to bring another strong female in, and from an author kind of point of view, one of the reasons I wanted to bring that story in was because in Shifting Gears, I'm riding with men the whole time, and they're my company and my mentors and my companions, and I learned so much for them. But I wanted to balance that and show that I have had strong female influences in my life, and so that was kind of one of the reasons I wanted to bring my grandmother into the story a bit, because it's all kind of told in flashbacks, so didn't have to be there, but yeah, I've had a lot of great influences, and she was one of them. Sardines, says David Tuttle. Sardines are, yeah, you get your salt, and yeah. Yeah, I think we all have to find out what works for us food wise, but it's not ideal, and I think maybe stopping at grocery stores where you have a better selection and the prices are usually better than just straight up gas stations can be a good option too.
I have a question about food. Do you ever fixate on a particular kind of food and then find at your next stop you can't find it? And how do you deal with that?
I often start fixating on kind of, a club sandwich with clam chowder and fries, like my favorite meal. And then by the time I stop, I don't want any of that. I just don't want anything. And I'm kind of down to what can I stomach right now. There's definitely been times where I've been disappointed. Like, I really, I look forward to that morning coffee, and you go to a gas station and they're like, oh, we're going to be brewing coffee. It'll be 10 more minutes. And, you kind of have to pass, or I choose to pass. So that one has made me sad a couple of times. And then other times when I walk into a gas station, and you kind of expect all convenience stores to be pretty similar, and it's just like you have no idea. It's some weird alternate universe that you've stepped into, and you don't know where anything is, and nothing is like it should be. And yeah, and it's probably not that different. I'm probably just sleep deprived and grumpy, but it gets really difficult to pick out what you're going to need for that period of being off the bike. Yeah. And one of the challenges in routes like the Log Drivers Waltz and other bike packing routes in BC is that there can be quite a long way between resupply, especially if you're riding at night. So you need to make those choices, whether you like it or not. So I see some food comments in the chat. That's great that people people have some suggestions. Richard writes, strawberry milk, lol. Yeah, if you read the book, you'll understand. Me and that strawberry milk, we got a bad history now. Well, maybe we could stop the recording and then just hang out for some informal chit chat for a few minutes. How does that sound?
Just maybe before we stop recording, just reiterate how to get in touch with you and how to get in touch. We can of course, our website has been shared in the chat. The Log Drivers Waltz.
Yeah, well, if people are interested to ride the route, we love to talk about bike packing. So it's kind of a dangerous thing, but we do say, yeah, let us know if you've got any questions, and if it's not on the website, we'll help you.
And we also have a Facebook page at the Log Drivers Waltz Facebook group that is has some really good discussion, exchange of information about what people are planning and how they're planning.
And they'll have things like, last year, just before the Grand Depart, there was a lot of water at one particular part of the trail, and so there was a lot of discussion. So I think that's sort of a very good place to start as well. But please don't hesitate to get in touch. And Meaghan, I don't know if you want to wrap up anything. We would like to say thank you very much for even like for coming and visiting this evening, and sharing all of your thoughts with everyone. It's amazing. It's one of the best things about the bike packing community that we think it's everybody's approachable and accessible and willing to chat, and it is niche, and in a way we are everybody's a little bit crazy, and but that's okay. We all understand each other just because we do this to not necessarily all night, but we do this, and So thank you for sharing your experience, and also for writing it down.
Well, thank you both for having me. And I think that you're right. I think we can all kind of relate to each other in cycle touring and bike packing. And, I think jumping into a new activity as an adult can be really challenging. And I was definitely turned off by road cycling when I first got into bike touring. Roadies just were like, they seemed kind of elitist. And I had a few negative comments that people made in bike shops and stuff that I was just like, I don't want to be like you. But I feel cycle touring and bike packing is a lot more open-armed and welcome. And I think we saw that at the bike packing summit, and that all different people can kind of come and find their way into this sport, and that the grand depart can both be this like chance for the people at the pointy end to really push themselves, and a chance for the people in the mid pack to have a big party, and a chance for everyone to kind of have these experiences outside the norm. And I think it's very cool that a sport can do all of those things. I don't even know if it's a sport, an activity, choice. I put a few links in the chat. I put my email address if anybody does want to get in touch to buy a book from me. It's the cover price plus about $5 shipping within Canada. I put a link to my Instagram where you can see what I'm up to. It's usually bikes, some cute dogs, and then my website where I infrequently update my blog. So that's what I got for you. Wow, so many nice things in the chat. Aw, you guys are the best. Thanks for being here.
And if anybody's in the Ottawa area, particularly in the spring, we have a couple of rallies which are a little bit different than a grand depart. Really, it's about riding relatively short distances between common campsites, and so it's a very social time. Takes place over Friday evening to Sunday evening, and so 2 nights of camping. It is a way to get into bike packing and sort of have a safety net. So just put a little plug in for that. Not that we're short of people that want to come, by the way. So that's also cool.
Do you guys have a cap for that event, or?
We have we're looking to have about 30 people each weekend, and we're at that already. So we're gonna have to manage that.
We'll have a waiting list though, because things do happen. So
yeah.
So maybe we should wrap it up. And James, thanks so much for managing the being the tech guy there. That's wonderful. And as James
thank
said,
you.
We do look forward to meeting you in person sometime soon. So
I look forward to it. I'm actually considering doing the Long Driver's Waltz this year. Well, sorry, next year, or the BC Epic. I got 2 of those on my radar.
Very cool.
fun. I think you'll find them quite different. So talk to Corey about that.
We had 4 riders on single speeds this last year. It was amazing. Really, really fun to see people riding the route on single speeds.
You don't need all those gears. They're just extra weight.
It's true. It's true. You're absolutely right. We're not going to argue with you.